All right. So good day, Coach DuWayne Campbell here again, this time with Coach Ryan Banta for another episode of the Coaching Excellence Podcast. And let me just give you a brief introduction to Coach Banta. He is the head coach of a very successful girls high school team in the United States, Parkway Central. And he's also quite popular for the reason I knew him first. He's the author of the Sprinters Compendium, which is one of those books that it was so good I had to own it twice. I have the ebook copy from Amazon, which is on my Kindle Fire and my iPad, and every time I travel, it has to travel with me so that I can reread and reabsorb the content of that book. And also, I have the physical copy that sits on my bookshelf that I stare at. I don't think I've opened it more than a couple of times because I'm really more of a ebook type of reader, but I had to own two versions of it. It was that good. I'll probably end up gifting that copy to another up and coming sprints coach in the future, but it's pretty awesome. And he's had quite a lot of success as the head coach of the Parkway Central High School. And today he's going to be sharing some of his strategies for building a winning culture in his organization, and especially as a head coach. Coach Banta, thank you for joining and sharing your time and your expertise with us.
Well, Coach Campbell, first of all, thank you for having me on. And is my sound still good for you?
Yeah, still pretty good.
Awesome. So I appreciate the wonderful introduction, and it's a pleasure to chat and talk. And, one of the things that I would have never expected is you would have asked me 21 years ago when I first started coaching that I would be on a podcast with a wonderful coach from, the islands and being around the world and being able to share some value and hopefully to be a net positive for the world and give them some different ideas as a coach. And one of the things that I kind of struggled with early on is having my gaze be narrowed down and my vision narrowed down to finding solutions to common problems that maybe I didn't have a relationship with a mentor or a coach that could help me. And so I wanted to make sure that for the other people coming behind me, that I could truncate the learning curve for them, reduce the time that it took for them to solve some of these problems. And for those that don't have my book, it's by no means this is the one way path. Instead, there are many paths depending on athlete, circumstance, environment, level of coach, level of experience. And, the beauty of the book, and one of the things I'm most proud of is that there are 50 plus contributors. And so there's someone who has contributed to my book that would certainly help you and have other people of all different levels in linear speed find value to improve, track and field, athletics, or soccer, or football, or rugby, or even cricket. And it just depends on, what you're trying to do with linear speed and power. But the book, I feel like, provides a lot of avenues for that.
Yeah, excellent. And that was one of the things I loved about the book as well, in terms of it had a lot of contributors, and there are a lot of different points of view based on the circumstances they were facing in their own programs or in their own region. Tell us a little bit more about how you got into coaching, Coach Banta.
Sure. So I originally went to college at a small school, Division III, and I ran college track there, and I played American football there as well. But for your listeners that don't know, Division III is a pretty low level competitively. I was all conference my freshman year in the 100-meter dash. I had a record on a very rarely run relay, an indoor 4x200 meters. So I had a modest college track and field career. But one of the reasons why my athletics career wasn't as good as it probably could have been is I always suffered a lot of injuries. And I was unable to put together seasons without pulling or tearing my hamstring. And so I was always kind of frustrated with how that experience went. And by no means was that going to lead to coaching originally. Originally, I went to university and got my degree in political science and a minor in history and Asian studies. And so my ideas of what I was going to do was something more to akin of working in the political world, politicians, policymakers, lobbyists. And as you probably are aware, just like all of us, because this is common in any country, is that politics is a pretty dirty business. And it left me kind of like disillusioned. I didn't feel like this is what I wanted my life to be. I didn't find a lot of value. And my mom locally was a really well-respected public school teacher in our school district, which is one of the largest school districts in Missouri. It's 17,000 students are in this one school district. So it's big. And my mom was the teacher of the year for that school district. She was Missouri. She's one of the finalists for the state of Missouri teacher of the year. So she's a very, very, very respected educator. And she always talked to me about, hey, I think you'd be a great teacher. And I'm like, I don't know. You know, those are pretty big shoes to fill. You cast a pretty large shadow. And she was great. She's a wonderful mother and a wonderful teacher. But I just didn't know that I could live up to that expectation. And I said, well, if this political thing isn't going to work out, maybe I'll go volunteer for my high school coach, you know, at my old high school. And interestingly enough, this is before the era of social media, before text messaging. We're barely emailing at this point, 21 years ago. And I walked in on one of these days that they actually didn't even have school in session. So it was one of those professional development days where teachers are doing things with other teachers and collaborating. And my old coach was the art teacher. He taught ceramics and sculpture at school, and then he was a coach. And usually to go find him, you got to go all the way to the back of the school because that's where art is at. And I opened the front door of the school to come in and check in. And the first person I see is Coach Warren, who's my old high school coach. No idea I was going to be there. No idea that I was coming to talk to him. And he's like, oh my gosh, Coach Banta, Ryan Banta, you know, what are you doing here? I said, actually, you're the person I wanted to see. And I was wondering if you had any spots available for somebody to come help volunteer. And he's like, oh my God, that's exactly what we're talking about. And as he turns away, and like motions to the rest of the room, there's a table full of assistant coaches who were talking about the upcoming track season. So the very moment that I should have walked into that room and that very person I should have seen was the person, and at the moment when I needed to see him. And I kind of believe that God knocks on the door and sometimes you got to go answer. And sometimes God just kicks the door in and grabs you by your shirt and says, it's time. And that was really one of those moments. And little did I know that conversation would blossom into a 21 plus year career in coaching and all the things that we're able to accomplish locally and sometimes nationally, depending on the kids I have, because I'm pretty much just exclusively a high school coach now. But it was such a beautiful moment. And I realized after about a week of doing this, 1 week, I'm like, oh gosh, my mom really was right. This is awesome. This is absolutely what I was meant to do. I finally feel like I have value. I'm finally bringing something to the table for young people that makes me feel good about the world. I'm making a difference in these kids' lives, and I'm so excited to do it every day. I was looking forward to it, just revving to go, ready to go, so excited. And that's really what kind of got me in. And that first year, I just volunteered for the boys team because the boys and girls at most high schools in our area are divided up. They don't train together per se. They aren't coached together in our area. And so I was with the boys. And then the next year, the girls' position opened up and we had a couple pretty talented kids. And I got the opportunity to be the head coach there. And we had a really good first year. We were all state in the 100, 200, 4x1, 4x2 relays. We broke the school record in the 100, the 200, and the 400. But as good as that first year was, in some respects, it was actually a step backwards for me because I actually thought I knew everything and I knew nothing. And so then it took about 3 to 4 years of not having a lot of success as a wake-up call to say, okay, I do really well when I have talented kids, just like most people. What can I do when I have to develop kids? How do I do that? Where do I find that? And thankfully, I had a number of mentors that helped me along the way, that now I feel like I am not just a nice, positive guy, but I'm also a guy who can improve people technically through adaptation, through strength development, through speed development, and everything else under the sun. I still don't know a lot, but now I know I don't know a lot, which is very different than a young coach who thinks they know everything and really knows nothing. And I think that that kind of change in your mindset is really important as you evolve, years down the line as a coach.
Yeah, awesome. I remember even the not the current head coach of our program, but the previous head coach, he used to always say, well, the moment you stop learning as a coach, career is dead. There's not much further you're going to go. You're going to stagnate and then you're going to fall off. And he said, and this was the guy that lectured in exercise physiology, at the local sports college here before getting into coaching. And he said, he basically echoed what your position is, that when you're starting out, you think you know everything. And then as you go along and you gain experience, you realize you did not know anything. And now you have to start learning stuff. So being around him and being around, our current head coach, that is also, very much into continuing learning and continuing education and stuff. It's pretty awesome journey for me. But I want this to be more for you to share, like along this journey that you've been on, and for a lot of the coaches that are going to see this, how do you approach the aspect of developing this winning culture that you've had, right? In fact, before we even get to that, what do you consider winning in your program? What do you consider as to be success for your program?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I measure success is retention of athletes. If the athletes are staying around, there's inherently something they've found in value for it. Especially now in the United States, kids have a lot of options, and most of those things have nothing to do with pushing your physical limits. It's about, posting pictures or doing stupid dances on TikTok, or looking at, young ladies on Instagram or whatever they're doing for 8 hours a day. They're sitting on their butts and doing nothing. So if I can provide some sort of value that these kids are willing to get out there, in some situations, work themselves to exhaustion, in very warm conditions, because it's actually very humid in St. Louis. Even though we're far inland, it gets pretty warm and it gets very humid because we've got 3 or 4 rivers in the area. So it's humid, it's sticky. And how do we get that done? So the biggest thing is retention. I want to keep kids in the program because there's something inherently valuable about what we do beyond winning, the first place at state, or getting an opportunity to go to the junior nationals, or making an Olympic trials time. It's about, getting those kids to stay in, because if they do, then those other things become more likely. So that's victory number 1. Victory number 2 is I want to see steady, progressive growth out of my athletes. And I get to have these athletes from 14 years old all the way up to about 19 years old, depending on what age they come in at. And, that's a very different person. A 14-year-old is very different emotionally, spiritually, physically, socially, by the time they're 19. And so how do you cast a wide enough net that you can get kids who are 19 years old to train with kids who are 15 years old and make sure that they're getting better all the time? And one of the things that's kind of funny about that age group of adolescents is that boys just get better. So 14-year-old boy, you can pretty much do anything. And because of the increasement of testosterone and puberty and height and muscle, all that stuff that comes on in adolescence, they're going to get better. Well, I pretty much exclusively coach female athletes. Well, most female athletes, whatever God gave them, they pretty much have it by the time they're 14 years old. And if you don't train correctly, if you don't train with the idea of progression and periodization schemes and figuring out through testing what is their best event where they have the highest potential, have the highest ceiling, then you're not going to have girls that are going to want to stay in it, because it might be fun when they're young and it's all new and everything's a novel experience, but then their body starts to change because of womanhood and they've done no training to smooth out the rough spots that come from that physical adjustment of female puberty. And my goal is I want to create as many windows of opportunity to blend those spots as best for those girls. And when they're seniors and they're 18 or 19 years old, they're running faster, jumping farther, throwing farther than they were when they're 14. And it should be a nice progression. And it shouldn't be a flat line. If you've got a kid who comes in at 14 years old and they've not improved but 3%, 2% by the time they're seniors, you're not doing your job. You're holding a stopwatch, you're keeping the kids busy, but you're not coaching them. And so for me, those things are success. And then when those individuals have success as improvement steadily, and they stay in the program with me for 4 years before they move on to college, then we should have a lot of team success. And unlike, a lot of cross country and track and field in international meets, team success really matters for a high school coach. And so do the team championships. And in Missouri, we compete in 19 events, including the javelin. We have that in high school in Missouri as well. A lot of states do not still in the United States. And so that's, and you get 2 entries per meet, and you get, your 4 relays, which have 4 people. So now you're talking about a team that's somewhere around 40 people or more to be successful. Well, that means you got to have a lot of buy-in. You've got to target a lot of kids. You've got to keep them happy. And you've got to build a culture that, takes care of the least talented kid and makes them feel good about their improvement, and also celebrates your most talented kids simultaneously. And so there's a lot of things that we do, which I'm sure we'll get into as we talk, that I do in my program to celebrate that stuff and ways of managing that so everybody feels like, they have a role to play on the team.
Okay, awesome. So it sounds like that what you've done is to orient the program around the athletes themselves and the type of experience that they have while they're in the program, which is, I think that's pretty much in line with what World Athletics is trying to get everybody on board with, that our sport needs to be more athlete-centered.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And one of the things that's interesting about that too is that the more we get going with that, the more people are going to have success. And the thing is, early on, kids have a hard time dealing with maybe getting beat by somebody and not being the very best person. And so that's why team sports have a lot of success over track, because if your whole team does well, then you feel like you've done well too, even if you're not playing. But with track and field and swimming and wrestling and sports like that, it's like, well, it's me versus everybody else. But if you can create an environment where you getting second place still really matters to the overall team score or our entire program, then that plays a role. So World Athletics tried to do that this year with having a team trophy and an actual team score. So NBC Sports and ESPN, they'll always have in America, they'll have the medal count of all the countries and what they're doing. And, depending on the country, they'll go up and down in the medal count because, the Chinese are really good at Olympic lifting at those smaller weight classes, where Iran is really good at wrestling, or, Italy's good at soccer. But with track and field, now it's hey, we're going to value the whole team. So all these countries, they probably need to start filling out their rosters if they really want to compete. B, now everybody matters a little bit more because you're scoring points for the team. And if you can really somehow financially compensate the whole team if they win, then there's even a little bit more on the line, especially countries outside of America where, you know, the US dollar goes a little farther, that I think it could be really a good model that high school and college track has kind of figured out. I would say high school track does a really good job of it. And then you get more kids involved in the sport longer who at first might not be the fastest or strongest or best kid, but as they mature, as they develop, they might leapfrog the other athletes who are early talents. And I mean, think about, you know, all these countries that have really good U20 athletes. And then that U20 athlete, when they become an adult against the men and women of the sport, they don't have the same amount of success. Well, that's probably because, first of all, they early specialized, you know, and they probably showed early talent. But sometimes that early physical talent that might still make you successful at U20 isn't going to be the same ceiling that you can get to go beyond U20. And so people forget, like, the more people you can keep in the sport, it's just like a roll of the dice. Increased chances of having some very wonderfully successful people, regardless of, you know, culture, race, whatever. You know, there are talented people in every corner of the world. We just got to find them.
Sounds good, Coach. Sounds good. Earlier you mentioned that, you know, based on the amount of events that your team has to compete in, it's a team of about 40 athletes. Touch on for us a little bit the importance of culture in building a team of so many kids from different backgrounds, different neighborhoods, different social and economic circumstances, to get them to work together to improve themselves through track and field, and how you coordinate that kind of.
Yeah, so for the people who don't know where I live, the city of St. Louis is somewhat of a segregated community, and that comes all the way back to old things before civil rights era and things like that. So one of the things they did at our school is they decided a long time ago in the 1980s that they were going to do desegregation. So we actually have kids who come all the way out to our suburban neighborhoods that live in the north side of St. Louis. And for those people that don't know the area, St. Louis routinely is considered one of the more violent cities in the United States. And where I coach and teach in Chesterfield, Missouri, is one of the wealthiest areas in the state. And at one point, there was a zip code that's included in my school district that was the wealthiest zip code in the United States. So how do we get kids that are from these very different backgrounds on the same page? Well, sports, just in and of itself, is a great builder of community, because it takes a lot of different people that are different shapes, sizes, colors, creeds to create a good team in track and field, because there's so many various events. You've got distance running, you've got sprinters, you've got throwers. So naturally, inherently, that's built in. The second thing that we do is I have a big sister, little sister program. So every new kid in my program has a big sister who's supposed to be their mentor, help teach them how to do the weight training in the weight room, how to teach them how to do the drills on the track, how to get them to understand like the ins and outs of the program that maybe I don't have time in 2.5 hours to teach everybody in the program. So what I end up having is, like, every year I'll have about 20 miniature coaches, you know, who are their peers. Also, that kid, no matter what background they're from, has a friend instantly on the team pretty much within the first week of practice, once we know who's going to be there and actually show up. And then we hook them up together with an older athlete. Also in my program, the older athletes don't haze. In fact, the older athletes take on more responsibility. So if you think about like the New Zealand All Blacks rugby squad, where they have the story about cleaning the shed, cleaning the locker room, like leaving that space better than you found it, and making sure that everything gets picked up off the ground, the bandages, the tape, the shoes, the water bottles, the this, the that, you know. So in my program, like, the older girls are responsible for setting up our encampment. So when we have our tents, our chairs, water, Gatorade, snacks, our blocks, our shots, our pole vault, our javelin, on and on and on and on. The older kids are responsible for that because the younger kids in your program that are coming in, they're so nervous, they're so scared, they have no idea what they're doing. And they could be, especially girls, they can be extremely helpful to the overall talent of your team and your team scores, because that's how we compete in high schools in the United States. And you need them, but you don't need them to be even more stressed out about, oh my gosh, where do I take the starting block to? Oh, do I have the right weight of the right shot? Did I get the right one? Did I get the one with the best grip? You know, all this kind of stuff. Oh my God, I forgot the water. I forgot the Gatorade. Seniors in my program who are 12th graders, who tend to be, again, anywhere between 17 to 19 years old, they've been through all of this stuff already. So they know how to handle it. They know how to deal with it. They know how to help. It's a little bit less stressful. In addition to that, I intensify the work for my rookies. They're always going to do less frequency of high intensity workouts, less days, less drills, less in the weight room. And some people go, well, then you don't really know where your kids are at. Why would you do that? I want them to stay healthy. So I want to do the minimum amount of work, have them enjoy the sport, have them have some success. And then because I'm a high school coach, they're at my school, they can't really run for anybody else. Hopefully they come back the next year and then we add a little bit more. And then by the time they're a senior, they are doing all the drills, all the reps, all the days of high intensity work, the frequency of the lifting and all of that. Every week in school, our kids have a theme that they dress up together. So like they'll do dress nice and they'll wear their nice dresses and they wear tennis shoes because I don't want them wearing high heels or shoes that mess up their feet. So we're wearing, and it kind of catches people's eye because nowadays American kids don't dress up at school at all. I mean, they might as well, you know, look like they have, you know, really poor homes that they're in the way they dress, you know, and I'm living in a nice area and you just be so surprised at what these kids wear at school, you know. But we dress nice. And so all the girls, you know, are wearing nice dresses and they're wearing shoes, and that grabs people attention. Like, well, what's going on? And everybody's like, oh, well, we have, you know, a track meet today at our high school. You should come out and watch us. And that gets more kids and they get excited. My trophies, which I know that, I don't know if this is going to be recorded on video, but if you're looking at my room, all my trophies that are statewide trophies that we've gotten are on display in my room up in front and center. And, you know, we make it a big deal that females in, you know, St. Louis, Missouri know that they're athletic too. And it doesn't matter where they come from, that they're going to be great. We do, you know, team dinners where all the girls get together and do team dinners. We'll do a team breakfast. And what we do is we bring in our team tent and we open up the tent inside in the cafeteria, and every girl on the team brings one item for breakfast so that no one feels like they're doing all of it and everyone feels like they can contribute and they feel good about that. We do team competitions where we'll do like a scrimmage amongst ourselves and they have to create their lineup and their team and they compete. And we offer up amongst those kids, we offer up like a golden ticket that if they win a contest that we have, they can cash in that golden ticket at any time to get out of a drill, to get out of a rep, to get out of a lift, to get out of mileage, whatever it may be. We do a team night at the movies, and we have a school theater, and we have a big jumbotron on our track. We have the kids come out and sit out on the turf at our track, and we watch a movie. Typically, we try to watch a movie about track and field. So like the story that's on Netflix about Usain Bolt, which is the really good one, and it's got him and Johan when he false starts, and they talk about that and his comeback, and he wins, you know, and it's a big celebratory. They love that. I mean, Americans love Jamaicans. So, and we do stuff like that. And the other thing is every kid in my program gets a reward every time they hit a personal best in anything. And we call that a PR bar. And so we give them a small, tiny candy bar for every personal record they get. And I know some people are like, well, I don't want to give my kids candy. That sends the wrong message. Well, I think it sends the right message that it's okay once in a while to have sweets. Not all the time, but once in a while. Don't have one of these diets that's so restrictive that you burn so many calories. And in America, we have a real big problem with young ladies starving themselves with anorexia, bulimia. And I want these girls to know that I don't care what they weigh. I just care about what the stopwatch says and the tape measure says. And we're going to celebrate with food because food is part of our culture and it's something to be enjoyed. Food is not the enemy, food is your friend. And we talk about that. Another thing we'll do is that in America, we have the March Madness basketball tournament for college basketball. Well, that's the beginning of track season. And we'll actually do a March Madness block start tournament to 30 meters. And the first day that we bring girls out on our program, we test them in a bunch of tests. One of them is a standing 30, standing flying 30, standing long jump, 5 repeat bounds. We have them throw a softball to kind of simulate javelin. We have them show if they can do gymnastic skills. We have them do an overhead back with a shot put. The next day, we'll see if they can do like hurdles, and we'll do like a little hurdle skills camp. We have them run the 800, and then we have them try the pole vault, try high jump, try throwing the disc, try throwing the shot, try throwing the javelin. And that's like the first 2 weeks of my season. Well, by that time, we now know who's good at all these things. And then I've kept that data where I have almost 2 decades worth of all that data. So then I can look back at years and go, oh my gosh, this kid has one of the best overhead backs in the shot put I've ever seen. Well, we need to get that kid thrown. Or man, that kid has a wonderful trail leg. Have you ever run the 100 hurdles? No. Well, one of those girls that we had who had never run the 100 hurdles in her life last year set our state record in the 100 hurdles and then went on to run the AAU national title for her age group and went 1369 FAT, non-wind aided, for a sophomore in high school. So this girl's 15 years old. That's pretty fast for an American kid. Okay. Obviously, there's a lot of kids out there around the world that are pretty advanced, but that girl never really did hurdles before that. If we didn't do that hurdle skill challenge, we would have never known. One of our best discus throwers we ever had was not a young lady who looked like a thrower. One of our best distance kids ever. And in America, we have a real weird cultural thing where kids of African descent sometimes don't like to run distance. The fastest distance kid I ever had that was completely my kid came from inside Northside St. Louis and was a city kid. Just one of the best kids that we've ever had as a distance runner ever. So if you're like got these cultural biases and you don't see things, you don't test things, you're not going to figure out what's the best event. And if the kid has early success and it too, then you can make sure like that kid I don't want to say you want to only give special attention to the kids who have these really great scores, but now that they have these good scores. Boy, oh boy, you want to put in an extra word. You want to be extra careful. You want to make sure that they continue in your sport. Okay, so we get all that data. Now, going back to the March Madness tournament, because I got off track. Once we get that standing 30, then I take the fastest people and I seed it like a tournament. So like the fastest people, they have the number 1 seeds, and you go all the way down to the slowest kid in the program. And they compete against each other in a tournament, much like the NCAA college basketball tournament in America. And we even have a constellation bracket. So that way, if a kid gets bounced early, they still get a couple all-out competitive starts. And things like that make it fun, and we'll do scavenger hunts with the team around the community, around our school. We break them up into smaller groups. We'll do things where like each captain will pick a team over the year. And it'll be like a fantasy team where each one of their kids on their team that they put together will score points for being at practice, being on time, hitting PRs, getting medals in our meets, scoring points in varsity races. And so every kid in the program gets better and they get rewarded. But what's funny is your kids who tend to be your slowest or least talented kids, they're not going to get the pat on the back and the high five at the track meet necessarily all the time, or they might not be winning and getting the attention in the paper. But in our program every week, we recognize all the PRs in our program, every personal best that was made. Every kid stands up. We ask them what was their PR. I got a PR on the bench press. I got a PR in my flying 30. I ran a PR in my 400 split in the 4x4. And we clap 1, 2, 3 for every one of their PRs that they have. You know, they get a clap, and then they come up and they grab a candy bar or whatever you want to do. Some people, again, they don't like to give out candy. Okay, then you can go and have them ring the lap bell on the track, and they ring the bell for every PR they got, and everybody cheers, and they're really excited. And so these are the types of things that we build in to our program so that people get excited. In my hallways, I put up huge posters with kids in color photos doing the sport who are in the building, you know, and we put that out there before the season starts to get the young kids excited. They're like, I know Tommy, I know Susie, I didn't know they did track. Oh my gosh, that's a really cool picture, you know, and you just create this hype and excitement and fun, and you create a family atmosphere where everyone's excited for everybody. You know, like one of the coolest things I got to see recently, you know, was Noah Lyles and what was it, Shawnee Miller-Weibo were watching, you know, the Commonwealth Games. Well, Noah Lyles is an American, so he's not going to run in the Commonwealth Games, but he's there as a fan supporting his friends. And so, you know, and Miller-Weibo obviously is, you know, running in the Commonwealth Games, you know, and so she's there supporting her teammates and stuff like that's fun. We can do that at an international level, you know, and the more connection you have community, the more connection you have to improving the young kids, the more that the young kids are going to feel that connection and believe that they can do it too. So like in football matches, soccer games, you know, they'll have the professional players walk out with a kid, you know, and that's a big honor for the kid to walk out onto the field with a professional soccer player. But wouldn't it even be cooler if those kids had a real relationship because that older athlete had come down and done a lot of community service, and part of their money that they get from their nation or whatever is to help coach, to promote, to sponsor, to reach out, to do clinics. So those things are really important. And we have kids all the time. So we had a young lady who set the Olympic trials record for the United States for the Tokyo Games. And, you know, she's a Parkway Central kid. From time to time, she'll reach out to our athletes and send them a letter saying, hey, I'm so proud of you. You're doing a great job. And there she's got a picture of her in the Olympics running and a handwritten note. Stuff like that are things that we do to make sure that we keep as many kids in the program. And that's a lot. I know I'm going on and on and on here in your audience, like, oh my gosh, when's this guy going to stop talking? But I want to make it very clear. There's a lot of things you can do. And some of the things for your sport might not be applicable, but many things can be applied with a little twist or carbon copied to make your program better. So that's a lot of the stuff that we do.
And a lot of them don't cost anything or cost very little to do.
Correct.
Just being efficient, being organized, and getting people involved. Like you said, building a community, making it fun, rewarding. Even if it's just a recognition. Recognition is a huge reward for a lot of these kids. I had a kid that did track, my own son, and he would tell us the beginning of track season, every single year, I would have a meeting with all the kids, and he would tell me, he's like, my goal for this season is to make the team so I can get gears. Because being in the school colors is a big thing for them,
Mm-hmm.
And it says that they're elite. It says that they're doing the school work and they're performing at a high level. It says that they're athletic, and all other kids look up to them just for that. I want to hear from you a little bit, and I know everybody wants to hear from you. Sometimes there are these kids that you have all these programs in place, and there might be this one or a few kids that they're being a little bit difficult, being a little bit don't want to participate, trying to stay away or otherwise disruptive to the program and the other kids in the program? How do you handle that type of situation?
Well, the first thing is, we try to figure out what makes them tick. So one of the things that I do when the season starts is we have the kids fill out a big questionnaire. We have a bunch of like words, like action words. What are these? Do these words describe you? Positive, outgoing, lazy, strong, fierce, savage, whatever it may be, right? And depending on what they circle, gives you a clue who they are. So like if a girl circles, I'm lazy, they're lazy. That's not a lie. They're most of the time they are. Do you know who mom and dad is or their guardian is, right? Can you have a conversation with them and say, hey, look, your child's wonderful. Educate me on how I best can help get your kid to do some of the things when they may or may not want to do it. The other thing that we did, so specifically the young lady that I had that was the state record holder and also the national champion this year for AAU, she didn't understand me right away. She didn't get me right away. I didn't understand her. There was we were mismatched communication wise. It wasn't that she was rude or I was rude. We were just mismatched. And so over time, having conversations and other people seeing this, I started to try to observe like, well, who and when does she respond well? What is common about those circumstances? The other thing is I try to not be super intense with the young people who are in my program for the first year. But like once that first season is done, then we come back and we talk again about, hey, this is your first year. These are things that happened. I will not train you or coach you this coming year if we can't do these common, what I consider like what we call in America norms for our practice, which is like rules for our practice. That's one thing. The other thing that we like to do is we try to split up the work with that kid. So all the coaches get together and we talk about where are the kids going this week? Who are they working with? What training groups are they going to train with? What events do we want to maximize this week of practice, or what type of training do we think we need to do? So I do that with my entire coaching staff once a week, every week. And we sit down and talk at length. After practice, I get together with my coaching staff for a shorter, abbreviated conversation. And then what we try to do is we try to split up. If it's a challenging kid, we don't want to have that one coach with that kid all the time. We try to split it up. Now, even though that might sound like more work in terms of how to coordinate it and be efficient, but also if you're having that conversation, the long conversation every day, or once a day, you're having the shorter conversations and the longer conversations once a week, you can plan this out where you can eliminate those challenges with that particular kid because they're not spending their entire time with a person who they might be mismatched with. And so this other coach who understands we're all on the same page, we're all doing the same thing here, can better maybe reach them in a certain situation or get them to do this part of the workout. Or they might have more fun doing that. And they're still, even though they're doing run-throughs on the runway, and you want them to do maximum fly sprints on the track, well, maybe those run-throughs on the runway are almost the same thing. And so you might not be able to get them to do it on the track or on the soccer pitch, but now they're doing it over here on the runway. Hey, you can't get the kid to squat in the weight room, but they got no problem doing depth squat, depth jumps off a plyometric box or doing, heavy squats with sandbags on their back or something. And so when you have a difficult kid, they are a challenge and they will stress you out. It's a reality. And the best coach in the world doesn't match up with a person in how they communicate and how they understand, because everybody has different motivations. Everybody comes with different history and different experiences. Like in the United States, me being a white man, puts me in a position that maybe some people are not comfortable with me, that they might not trust me, and so it takes a long time for them to go, okay, I trust him. And not only do I trust him, I actually believe him. And I actually think he knows what he's doing. Well, that might take a long time. And if you force it, if you dial it up to 100, and it's just, you're like, you got to do it, then you're going to lose that kid. So you got to figure out ways of what can you tolerate early, and then over time, what more expectations can you build, which goes back to my philosophy. Like I told you, my freshman kids, who are usually my rookies, I do have rookies that come in as sophomores, juniors, or seniors. They always do less. They have less responsibility. They don't have a lot of team responsibility. So it's more about get through your workout and compete. And if you can do those things, then we're probably okay. But with the understanding, that kind of funniness where you're kind of avoiding work, or you're hiding behind the pole vault pit, or you're not warming up, you're not cooling down, you don't go to the weight room when you're told, that next year that's not going to fly, but hopefully you have people that work with you as a team of coaches that can help deal with that tough kid, because maybe they match up better communication wise. Their two pieces fit better together communication wise than maybe yours. And that worked really well this year with that particular athlete. My boys coach, who was my coach, still coaches at my high school, and he's a really good hurdles coach. And I said, why would I coach her hurdles when you're the best hurdle coach in the St. Louis area? I'll coach her sprint workouts. I'll coach her training. I'll take care of all her warm-ups and cool down and her drills. Okay. But you're going to be responsible for taking care of like the 100 hurdle technique, because it's a very unique skill set. And so he did. And he actually, because he took on her, then he took on a lot of the other hurdle girls as well. And even though we've had a lot of success in the hurdles, I've had a number of all-state girls, both at the 100 hurdles and the threes, because they don't do the fours in Missouri high school. They do 300s because, I don't know, I guess they're afraid people won't run them. But, I've had that. But for this particular year, with this particular kid and their particular personality, a softer voice, a more gentle personality was something she needed. And then what did I do to help Coach Warren? I took his boys and took care of acceleration phase and block starts and block setup and talked them through that. And so I helped him out in that regard with those kids who might have thought, well, Banta's better at that than he is. And the girls know that Coach Warren's really good at the hurdles. So we'll switch roles, and we'll team it. And so those are things that you can do to deal with challenging and difficult personalities. The other thing is, philosophically, I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, I love you all the time. I do. I love you. And in America, that means one thing, and some places means something else. But I don't like you all the time. And what I mean by that is I don't like your decisions. I think you're making a bad choice. I love you no matter what. I will defend you. I will protect you. I will help you. But I don't always like the decisions you make or the choices you make or the things that you're doing, And so as a coach who cares about you, I'm not always going to be nice. And I had a conversation yesterday where I caught a couple of my distance girls who were running cross country. They were walking. And these are girls who have been in my program for 3 years and are not hurt and have a lot of experience. And I let them know that I was disappointed and I didn't like it and that it can't continue. And I pulled them aside. I didn't do it in front of the entire team. I just did it with the 3 girls who had been walking. And I told them, I said, I'm upset, so disappointed. But I said, the only reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I care. If I didn't care, if I didn't think you were great, I'd let it go. But that's not what I'm about. Now, you can be upset because it doesn't feel good to have somebody tell you that or to say it in not the nicest tone. But I would hope eventually you understand why I'm doing it. Because if you do that, even if it's a valid, I was cramping up, my muscles. Okay, great. But what if somebody else just uses that as an excuse next time? And I don't hold you accountable, but they can do it. That's not right. So I have to have a minimum standard of things that we're going to do. So, there's only so many things I'm going to let happen. I'm not going to let the kid do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. But we figure out ways to get them to do what we want most often when we want, as often as we possibly can. And that's the approach that has to happen. Now, funny story, that young lady one of the 3 girls that I talked to yesterday wrote me a huge long email and saying, I felt like, you were disappointed and I'm upset and this is really hard right now. And I just want you to know that, like, I feel like, I couldn't tell you what was going on. And what did I do? I wrote her back. I said, thank you for advocating for yourself. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for following up. Thank you for explaining. I appreciate all those things. But also, you still need to run the workouts. And if you're cramping up, then you need to eat. And if you don't have food, you need to tell me ahead of time, hey, lunch was really bad. Let me know ahead of time, not while we're in the middle of the workout and then we don't have the understanding of what's really going on. Communicate more up front so that we don't have worse problems down the line. If there's an injury or soreness, every kid in my program has the ability to log in to a Google form, on Google that we've created that says, I'm going to be late, I might have to miss, or I'm going to have to leave early. And then there's another Google form. I have this thing that's sore on me. I got hurt in physical education class. I was up late. I got hit by a baseball, walking past the baseball, whatever it may be, and I feel sore, or one leg's hurting me, my hamstring's tight. So then when the kids come to practice, I already know that stuff's going on. And then there's less of that aggravation or irritation. And I can prepare an adjusted practice for them that will help them get as much done as we possibly can. And it allows them to share it where they're not making me mad 5 minutes before practice. So then I can deal with it internally in my classroom and then come out to practice and be much more positive and productive to get them to do as much as we can get them to do, not hurting them, but to get as close to the original workout that we wanted, even if they got to leave early, come late, miss, or they have something sore or maybe even injured.
Sounds awesome, Coach. Thank you so much. You've given us a lot of really great advice, a lot of your own wisdom that you've accumulated throughout the years, and we're really, really grateful for it. Can you tell our viewers and those who are going to listen to this podcast on whatever platform, if they would like to get some more information from you or advice, where could they reach you?
Well, first of all, Coach, thank you for letting me come on and chat with you today. I'm excited that you're doing a podcast. More people we have out sharing ideas and coaching and thoughts and education, the better, because there's probably a problem that somebody's come across, and having these conversations helps solve some of those or inspires others. So thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share and hopefully provide some value. To communicate with me, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, but I'm never there. So my Instagram is my name. It's just ryan.banta, and I'm verified on Instagram, even though I don't have a lot of followers there, but you can follow me there. On Twitter is where I do most of my social media work, and that's Sprinters Compend. So it's the name of my book all the way out to the N. So because they just don't give you that many characters, or you can look me up as Ryan J. Banta on there as well. And then I'm obviously Ryan Banta on Facebook. And I have my own podcast called The Companions of the Compendium. So, once you're done with Coach Campbell and listening to him, and you want to listen to even more content and things like that, you can find me there. I have a book that's called The Sprinters Compendium that's, sold around the world. That's an in-depth coverage of linear speed and sprint training. I also have a video on championship productions online for straight direct viewing online, and it's called Ryan Banta's The Critical Mass System of Sprint Training. And I have a CoachTube page, and I have a YouTube page, which is Bantasmo 1978. So there's a lot of ways to get content that I've produced Articles I've written on Simply Faster or Just Fly Sports, you can find me there, and on speed endurance. So I've been trying to share as much as I can to whoever will listen, in dozens of different ways. So come find me at whatever your preferred choice might be. And I'm pretty good about getting back pretty quickly and touching base with everybody. And I just love the fact that with the modern world we live in, we can talk to passionate coaches such as yourself and others. And what we're doing is helping humans. And that's what we're here for.
Yeah. And for myself, I can easily be found anywhere on the internet. It's kingleo.876 and kingleo876.com. If you type in kingleo876, you're going to find me. I've pretty much taken I've taken that name on every single major platform, kingleo.876. So I'm pretty easy to find, right? Thank you guys again. Thank you, Coach Banta, for your time. Thank you, the listeners, for tuning in for another episode of this podcast, and we hope to see you on the next one.
Thanks, Coach.